Millions of years ago, giant beasts roamed across the earth. They ate, they reproduced, and then they died and in some cases were fossilized. Their fossils have revealed a lot about our world's history, but there are still many prehistoric secrets yet to be uncovered. But sometimes these ancient artifacts don't stay hidden for long. Sometimes people find them, unearth them, and take them home with them. Welcome back, everyone. It's me. And today we're going to look at one of the greatest mysteries in paleontology, the mystery of the lost dinosaur fossils. We've got quite a few stories to get through, so let's get started. It was 1988 when the curator of the Museum of the Rockies in Montana put an end to his shift. It was after hours, so he locked up and headed home. He double-checked that all the doors were locked before he left and set off the alarm system. But when he returned the next morning, something was wrong. Someone had broken into the facility and stolen several dinosaur bones. The thieves had caused thousands of dollars worth of damage in order to get what they wanted. What did they take? Several fossils, including some that were hundreds of millions of years old. Among the stolen fossils was the skeleton of a young Triceratops nicknamed Black Beauty. That last name wasn't because the dino was particularly attractive. It was named Black Beauty because its fossil was found in a coal mine. The museum was able to recover some of the stolen fossils, but the remains of Black Beauty were never found. Over the next decade, the people at the museum scoured the state trying to locate the missing pieces, but their efforts were in vain. The fossil was gone without a trace. Where could it have gone? And who would steal a priceless piece of history? The only clue the police had to work with was this: a muddy boot print near the window the thieves had broken. Unfortunately, this wasn't much use since anyone could have been wearing those kinds of boots. To this day, the case is considered to be one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in paleontology. But here's the thing. It wasn't just some unknown thieves who stole the fossil. It was a well-known collector by the name of Peter Larson. This guy had already gotten into trouble for stealing fossils from government land. So when he heard about the robbery at the museum, he saw an opportunity to profit. Larson and his cronies made off with around $200 million worth of artifacts. Among the stolen goods was Black Beauty. But here's where things get tricky. Although Larson admitted to taking the fossils, he claimed he'd actually bought them from someone who'd poached them. The thieves who broke into the museum had apparently sold the fossils to Larson for $60,000. When authorities heard this, they naturally went to Larson's house to conduct a search. And lo and behold, they found evidence that the dino had been there. Larson had even bragged about his prized possession, telling people that he owned a piece of a Triceratops that came from the famous Black Beauty. Still, prosecutors couldn't make a case stick. Since nobody could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he'd stolen them, he got away with it. That might have been the end of it, if not for one thing. You see, Larson continued to brag about the stolen goods and eventually gave reporters the location of the fossil. A reporter from the New York Times tracked down the owner of the property where the Triceratops remained buried. After getting permission, the reporter unearthed the fossil and took it to the authorities. It was Black Beauty. Finally, justice was done. Well, sort of. The fossil was returned to the museum, but Larson was never charged. In fact, he lived out the remainder of his days as one of the most notorious fossil smugglers in the world. So why do some people go to such great lengths to steal prehistoric artifacts? Well, there are many reasons. Some people are driven by greed. They know the fossils are valuable and want to profit from selling them. Others are motivated by ego. They want to be the ones who discover the fossils and have their name written down in history. Then there are people like Larson who simply can't resist a good hunt. These people love the thrill of the chase. They enjoy the challenge of finding a rare fossil and don't care how they get their hands on it. Now let's look at another case involving a greedy bone thief. In June 2014, the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences announced the discovery of a new species of dinosaur. It was an ornithopod that lived in what is now Belgium around 70 million years ago. Because the dinosaur had been found in the village of Oudkar, the researchers decided to name it Outcarosaurus. But that name wasn't really appropriate. Not only was it difficult to pronounce, but it also didn't really sound that intimidating. So the scientists came up with a new name, one that was easier to say and captured the essence of this meat-eater. They named it after Hannibal Lecter, the infamous serial killer from The Silence of the Lambs. How did they come up with that name? Well, It turns out that the bones had been sitting in a private collection for nearly 20 years. The man who owned them had acquired them from an illegal dealer in the early 1990s. At the time, it was legal to own dinosaur fossils in Belgium, but the practice has since been banned. So the man kept the fossils hidden until he could no longer do anything with them. There they sat for another decade, until scientists finally realized what they had. They had the fossilized remains of a raptor. This particular raptor was a bit different from the velociraptors depicted in Jurassic Park. It was larger, reaching around 30 feet in length. It was also more closely related to Ankylosaurus than had previously been thought. But despite their differences, the two dinosaurs were still quite similar. In fact, they were so similar that the scientists wondered if they should belong to the same genus. Ultimately, they decided not to. But they did give the new dinosaur a terrifying name, Hannibal Lecter. Okay, here's one more story of a dino heist. In 2015, a group of men were demolishing a building in western China. When they busted through a wall, they found a cache of bones. At first, they didn't think much of it. They assumed the bones belonged to some ancient animal. But when one of the workers showed the bones to a local museum curator, he made a shocking discovery. The bones were from a dinosaur, specifically a type of sauropod. The men had stumbled upon a real-life dinosaur. Unfortunately, they hadn't found the entire fossil. Someone else had beat them to that. In fact, the person responsible was none other than the building's owner. He'd purchased the bones from a farmer who'd found them on his property. The owner planned to sell the fossil to a private collector, but the workers found out and reported him. By the time authorities arrived, the owner had already fled. Police searched high and low for him, but they couldn't find him anywhere. The fossil was returned to the museum, but the mastermind behind the heist was never caught. And that's 3 mysteries of lost dinosaur bones. Have you ever found a dinosaur fossil? Let me know in the comments. While you're at it, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to the channel.